It's a brand new hockey year, believe it or not. Welcome to 100% Hockey. Just so you know, the NHL year goes from July 1st to June 30th. So the fiscal year for the NHL, that's why contracts are done the way they are. That's why the free agency occurs on July the 1st, much to some people's chagrin, because this is the first few days of the 26-27 season. Yesterday was a fascinating day for free agents and trades, as it has been for the last 10 or 12 days. It has been an amazing time in a league that has a salary cap that is growing, and teams are jockeying for position in trying to get ahead of the other guy. John Shannon here. Darren Millard is off on vacation for a few days, well-deserved after putting up with me and spending all that time around the Vegas Golden Knights, who went to the Stanley Cup final. Today on the show, Scott Burnside. We will rehash a little bit of what we saw yesterday, what we saw at the draft, who's going to be good, who's going to have some issues, and what kind of things will we see in the next few months before the NHL regular season starts at the end of September, by the way, in 2026. And then we'll be joined by a guy who just got demoted, or did he? Doug Armstrong is now no longer the general manager of the St. Louis Blues. He is the president of hockey operations only. I don't think it's a part-time job, but it is one that is certainly have a little different responsibilities for Doug than he was both the president and general manager, as Alex Steen takes over the GM's position with the Blues. So many trades, so many free agent signings. Darnell Nurse is now a San Jose Shark. Sergei Bobrovsky is a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Freddie Anderson joins the Oilers. Vincent Trocheck and Anders Lee are members of the Utah Mammoth. And there are still some question marks about some big free agents and players who haven't really told their teams of their futures. We know Zach Werenski now has kissed and made up in Columbus and will probably start the season with the Blue Jackets. But Jason Robertson is still out there, and you have to wonder what's going to happen. And we saw an offer sheet on the first day of free agency, which is something we rarely see, as the Devils threw out one to Barrett Hayden. John Shannon again here on 100% Hockey. Scott Burnside first, Doug Armstrong second. This is 100% Hockey.
Face Off Inside the NHL returns, taking you deeper behind the scenes than ever before. See it all from the star-studded Four Nations Face Off tournament.
Us against the world, boys.
To the adrenaline of the Stanley Cup playoffs.
I'm scared of you guys.
With candid interviews and backstage access, experience the sacrifice, the rivalries, and the determination that define NHL greatness.
Just when I thought last year couldn't be topped, here we are.
A new season of Face Off Inside the NHL. Watch now only on Prime Video.
This is 100% Hockey. Don't forget, on YouTube or on any of the podcast platforms, if you like it, hit that like button, subscribe, give us some comments, thumbs up. Don't give us thumbs down. Just give us the thumbs up. Joined by Scott Burnside. Scotty, have you recovered from a day we thought was going to be pretty quiet yesterday, and all it did was create some news everywhere in the NHL?
I know. I kind of like this little intimate setting, though, John. Just you and me. Don't have to share it with Darren or Zeiss or Eric Hatchick. Just you and me. It's like the old days, right? Back in Leafs TV. So I feel this is right in my wheelhouse. So
well, you know what? There comes a time that we have to cut to the chase and just get to the facts. And I figured between the two of us, we could probably do that better than having a big party.
Well, and let's be honest, everyone else is on vacation already after July 1st. So that's all right. My feelings aren't hurt. I'm happy to be here. No, you know what?
They have lives. We don't. So
wasn't that the sad truth? But I will say this. I was thinking, heading into July 1st, and pecking away at my newsletter, and to me, July 1st is different than it used to be, at least in theory, where, at least the way I remember back, certainly after the the lockout and the introduction of the salary cap. But still, I think for many years the idea of July 1st was that you could, if you couldn't completely build your team on July 1st, and you could fill an awful lot of holes on July 1st. And I feel like that's changed a little bit. But boy, when you got to the end of July 1st, 2026, there were a number of teams, I think, who made significant moves to, whether it's reinforcing their identity or creating an identity. I look at the work that San Jose did and that Utah did, and where's Edmonton fit into all this as they try and recover from a disappointing one and done in the playoffs. So I thought there, to your point, I thought that this July 1st maybe there was more, and that's to say nothing of Toronto. I mean, maybe the team that is more different today than they were, okay, let's call it 2 weeks ago or 10 days ago, than any other team in the NHL. And who would have thought that, maybe with, new GM and John Chayka coming in, and boy, he is not, he just hasn't been afraid to make significant moves. And that's what happened with the Leafs on July 1st to round out a very interesting, first month on the job for John Chayka.
Well, you do have to give him his due. We're not in a world now of, we'll think about it, we'll get back to you. Yeah. We're in a world for the Maple Leafs of, we've got to make change. And I don't think anybody saw the Nick Paul trade coming. No. And by the way, it's amazing. Toronto did pretty well in free agency and trades. Edmonton was really active once Darnell and the dam burst after the Darnell deal got done to San Jose. Winnipeg signed Mario Ferraro. I guess there's really no problem signing in a Canadian team, is there? There was nobody advocating that we had to get out of Dodge yesterday. It kind of worked itself out.
That's it. I haven't gone back to look. How many of those guys are American? I mean, maybe that's the
enough. Enough.
Yeah, I know. No, it's such an interesting time in the NHL. I think in general, because we're going to see the cap go exponentially, and people are, like I see people up in arms. Oh, Bowen Byram signs 12.5. It's crazy. Or Mason Marchment, what a nice deal for him to go home to San Jose. I'm so old that I once spent a couple of days or a few days with Brian Marchment and his family in San Jose back in the day, and I remember going to talk to his dad in Scarborough. I mean, it was, and what a nice turn for Mason Marchment to go back to a place where he grew up, and, the connection there. But it's a lot of money for him, right? It's a guy, I think he's topped out at 22 goals. But the landscape, I think you have to look at it, the landscape completely different, right? The cap is going up. People have money to spend. And so the contracts are going to look different. And so I think you have to get over that. And, for me, a guy like Mike Greer and bringing in Jacob Trouba and Darnell Nurse, yeah, it's a lot of money. And those guys are, in many ways, are polarizing figures. But what's his mandate? His mandate is to change the complexion of that team. They were 30th overall in the NHL in goals allowed per game. What do you got to do? You got to fix your D. So, you're right. You really can't afford. Man, you can't be foolish, and you can't be, you can't, go off the handle. But I do think you have to be assertive. And John Chayka, very assertive. Right. I love the Nick Paul ad, and, following on the heels of the Darren Radish. I have zero issues with Sergei Bobrovsky. I don't know what it takes to, when you're building your goaltending team in the NHL now, what is the blueprint for winning a Stanley Cup? I think you could do a lot worse than Sergei Bobrovsky, although the Canes just won a cup with, Freddie Anderson and Brandon Bussi coming in at, I think they were under $4 million total. So, who knows? And good on Freddie Anderson for going to Edmonton. I mean, there's, the spider web is out there. But to your point, I think you have to have a plan, and you have to move assertively to implement that plan. And then you got to figure out whether you had the right plan.
I want to know how and why the Panthers couldn't get to $7 million for 3 years with Bobrovsky. To me, that's one of those ones. Or did they just want to move on?
You have to, it really is an interesting, question for.
I mean, Markstrom's at $6 million.
And, listen, I know Sergei Bobrovsky didn't have a great year. No one did in Florida. You've been to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals. You won back-to-back cups. I give that entire team a pass last year,
Right.
including Bobrovsky. And Bobrovsky's 37. What's Jacob Markstrom? 36?
Yeah.
So, and with all due respect to Jacob Markstrom, not a great year in New Jersey. I don't know. But here's the thing, and you and I should know this after watching what Bill Zito has done in South Florida. Never doubt him, right? Like, so
hard to question. It is hard to question.
Yeah. So again, what have you done for me lately? I mean, this is going to be a really interesting year for the Florida Panthers. I'm a huge Seth Jones fan. It broke my heart that he couldn't go to the Olympics. But if he comes back and he's back on track, he was so good for them, winning the cup the spring before. Obviously, Alexander Barkov's return to full health. Marchand and again, I've spent a lot of time over the years with Radko Gudas. I know, public enemy number one for some Canadian fans after the Olympics, but and a 6-year deal, but at 1.5 million, again, I love, Bill Zito looks, who are the guys that are gonna, obviously help the Panthers get into the top 8. But when I look at that team now and assuming good health and assuming Jacob Markstrom gets to a level, and I assume there'll be Akira Schmid behind him, but right. If you get B level goaltending, they're going to be a handful next spring. Who's going to want to play that team in the playoffs? By the way,
the Gudas deal, I've always dreamt that if I was an NHL player and somebody said, here's $5 million for 4 years, so $20 million, I would say, no, I want $20 million over 8 years.
Yes.
I mean, Radko Gudas got the perfect retirement deal.
Yes.
It's almost like a super pension. I mean, he could play one more year because he's 36. They're going to have to pay him out, and it's only $1.5 million. It's a brilliant move for a guy who's, I think, is still an impact guy. The question for me now is, do you think the Maple Leafs now view themselves as a playoff team?
Well, I think they should. And to me, what's interesting now in the Atlantic, okay, Florida misses the playoffs. We know what Billy Zito has done there, starting with Brady Tkachuk. Do you have any doubt that, again, let's assume some good health and, a level of proficiency from Jacob Markstrom, that team's a playoff team, right? So slot them into your top 8. Tampa is such an interesting, we talk about Nick Paul being traded, and of course, Darren Radish coming from Tampa to Toronto. The John Carlson, I'm a huge John Carlson fan.
It's a lot of money.
I wonder, yeah, short term though, the 2 years it makes sense. And it was interesting that Carolina, of course, who had his rights, couldn't or didn't want to get there. And that's a couple of times, right? Jake Gensel was with Carolina, ends up in Tampa. John Carlson, again, a big fan, he's such a good player. But, where is Tampa in that mix now? Is that 4 years in a row, one and done? Are they better? I'm not sure they're better. Well, I'll say it right now. I don't think they're better than the team that lost to Montreal in the first round. So, and I think Toronto is much better than the team that missed the playoffs. So, man, it's going to be to me, the sands are already shifting in the Atlantic Division. Do you think? Well, what do you think? Do you think the Leafs are a playoff team?
I think they're going to. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. Yeah, I didn't think they were going to be. To the point where what John Chayka has done, and you're going to laugh, is kind of overshadowed Gavin McKenna.
He's protecting him. No pressure now.
And so all of a sudden, McKenna, who's at prospects camp today, as the 18-year-old is. All of a sudden McKenna's on that club, and they've got some depth. The Radish deal to me is still fascinating because there's no guarantee that it's going to translate to another team like it did in Tampa. The Lightning to me are a question mark, but I think the biggest question mark is and the reason why they lost to Montreal was where's Victor Hedman in all this? And can Victor Hedman come back and be Victor Hedman again? If that's the case, then the Lightning are still a factor in the Atlantic. Ottawa, Ottawa's not done yet, but is Ottawa anywhere near the team that they were last year without Brady? Eklund's a good player, but he's not Brady. But without Brady there, do other guys pick up the slack? There's some interesting questions there, and then what it leads to me, and Buffalo I think is the real deal. So Buffalo's off doing their thing, and to me this all points to what the heck is Steve Yzerman doing? That's what this points to in the Atlantic. What the heck is Steve doing, and how can he get out of this funk?
Well, I don't know how you answer that. I mean, how are they not? Who's Detroit better than in the Atlantic to start with, and how do they? What's their path to the playoffs? I think the simple answer: they don't have a path to the playoffs. Though certainly, how right now, you look at that team, and you look at the issue with Dylan Larkin, and still unresolved. And listen, I totally get. If you're Steve Yzerman, he's been through this before. Remember when he was in Tampa and Marty St. Louis needed to leave and he needed only to go to the New York Rangers. Steve Yzerman did a pretty darn good job of leveraging a really good return for an important player in Marty St. Louis. Dylan Larkin's not that player, I don't think, but it's still a very difficult spot for Steve Yzerman to be in. And you've hit the nail on the head. It's difficult because your captain wants to leave, in the middle of his contract. But your process, and it's different. And if a guy wants to leave a team that's either rebuilding totally or a surefire playoff team, so okay, you make the best deal and you move on. Right now, Detroit's not a playoff team. You're in an incredible funk. I don't know. I don't know how it gets better next year. I don't know how they make the playoffs. To me, it will be a miracle if they make the playoffs.
Yeah. It's one of those ones where it would not surprise me to see Dylan Larkin playing for the Red Wings next year. It really wouldn't. I mean, because Steve's principled enough, I'm trying to be positive. Steve's principled enough in all this to say, you know what, we've got a contract with you and you got 5 years left.
Yeah.
So, no move is no move.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure we're going to get to it, but it's been interesting to watch the whole situation with Zach Werenski unfold in Columbus. And, think about the twists and turns in that story. And finally, to get to a point where, and I thought it was the best way to handle what had turned into a pretty ugly situation was for both Zach Werenski and Don Waddell, to sit down, have whatever kind of heart-to-heart they did, and then to come out and say, okay, things got a bit off the rails. I'm happy to be here. I want to win here in Columbus. Who knows? He's got 2 years left. Who knows what happens at the end of that? At some point, I wonder if there has to be a reckoning for Dylan Larkin. If nothing, because Steve Yzerman, back to our point, he cannot trade Dylan Larkin and not get a boffo return. And that doesn't mean picks. It doesn't mean a kid who's a couple of years away playing in college or in the AHL. He's got to get NHL players to populate his roster. And right now, again, to your point, if it doesn't happen, Dylan Larkin will have to come to camp and he'll have to suck it up. And that's, it may not be pretty, but maybe it's not as bad as people how can he come to camp? Because you're being paid to, pal. Right? That's your job. Your job is to come and play for the Detroit Red Wings, and you have a contract, so you better be there, and you better put on your best face. And, I know Dylan a little bit from, Four Nations and the Olympics. I have no doubt that he would do just that. But it is going to make for some interesting times if that's what happens in September.
And I think really you've touched on it. What value do other teams have in Dylan Larkin? Because Dylan Larkin, his value as a Red Wing, I believe, is much higher than other teams on the outside look and say, well, Larkin's not a first line center.
No, he's not. No.
And so I'm not paying first line center prices for a guy that, was an effective player down the line at the Olympics, and maybe that was and I know that was a great team, but it was also an indicator of really where Dylan Larkin fits into a high profile team.
Yeah.
So that to me, that's a huge question.
Well, if he's your first line center, you're probably not acquiring Dylan Larkin because you're not.
Right.
Right. Like
and you're not making the playoffs. And that's why Dylan Larkin's leaving Detroit.
That's right. If Dylan Larkin's your first line center, you're right. You're probably not in the playoffs. So what's the point? And, listen, I see people talking, well, we trade Dylan Larkin to Minnesota and, as long as you get Matt Boldy back, that is never going to that's never, ever going to happen. So, that's exactly it. Steve Yzerman's he's in a jam. That's just, and, he's got a player under contract and maybe it all works out. Maybe you just suck it up and maybe you play and maybe things turn out differently in Detroit than we think they are going to. And, it's like Zach Werenski. I'm curious what you think of that. Is it inevitable that he's gone after 2 years? And so next summer, you're really talking about trying to trade him and all the things that we went through, at least theoretically in the last, week or two. Or does something happen in Columbus where this was a moment and then, things change?
I think it all depends on whether you win or not.
Yeah.
Look at what's happened in Buffalo. Buffalo went from being a pariah.
Yeah.
I'll go anywhere but Buffalo. Now, teams and players are saying, well, the player's taking Buffalo off the list. We can move them to Buffalo because Buffalo's got a really good environment. People saw what a hockey town Buffalo is. They're winning. They have a great nucleus of players. There's nothing to say that can't happen in Columbus in 24 months too. When you think you think of Rick Bowness's record when he took over, is he's able to maintain that level, then that team is going to be a team coming out of the Metro division into the playoffs because there are other teams in that division that are not improving. That's for all you Ranger fans out there, so from that perspective, it's a great place to live. I know that. I have lots of friends that have lived there and enjoyed it, and an unbelievably positive fan base. So winning an environment and treating people properly, if Don Waddell, and Don well, they do things properly, then why not Columbus?
Yeah, it is amazing when you think of the history of that team and there's just been so many things that have been, beyond the control of coaches and managers and the things that have happened there. And there's been so little success, right? Like that's just the reality. So, but you're absolutely right. And we're talking ancient history now, but when you think about the Pittsburgh Penguins and there have been a destination franchise for a long time because of Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and all the things that happened there. People forget, no one wanted. The team was going to go to Hamilton, right? They were going to move. They were going to move anywhere, and so you have to have some good things happen to you. And it's interesting. I don't know. I don't know whether they're. It's hard for me to see, even in the kind of wishy-washy Metro. I don't know if they're a playoff team right now or not. I don't know.
To me, it falls on their goaltending. And their goaltending let them down the stretch in Columbus. Jet Grieve, for all the good things that he did. There was a couple of games that he needed to make saves. He didn't at key times. Up 3-0 in a couple of games, needed to make saves. It just didn't happen. So that to me is a lot of where the improvement needs to happen in Columbus. We touched on Larkin. We've touched on Werenski. Can you give any thought process to what the heck Jason Robertson is thinking?
I want to stay in Dallas, but maybe not. Or it's so in Dallas they end up sort of having to trade Bork, and it hasn't been exactly a straight line in the last year for Jim Nill, and who's 3 times in a row manager, GM of the year, whatever the record is. I mean, generally considered the standard bearer for NHL GMs, both in terms of, bringing in players from the outside, whether it's through trade or free agency, and drafting and developing. Man, that team is, they seem to check all the boxes, and yet, that first round loss to Minnesota, that really stung. And I'm sure Jason Robertson's still bitter about not being on Team USA, even though at the end of the day, it's hard to fault GM Bill Guerin with the roster that he assembled that won gold in Milan. So I don't know. Turning down the big, dollar in Seattle, I honestly don't know what to make of that, because to me, he's a player. I know his playoff numbers are good, but to me, one of the reasons he's not on Four Nations and he's not on the Olympic team is that maybe it's a feeling, the failure to elevate at critical moments. And I'm not throwing Jason Robertson under the bus because to say it's his fault they haven't won a Stanley Cup or been back to a final, but there's just something there. And we're talking now, even though the cap's going up, it's so much money, $15 million. Okay, what's your, I don't know how it ends, and I don't know where you find a spot that makes sense for him. I don't know, maybe Pittsburgh, the brothers could play there.
Yeah, Kyle's going to have a team of just brothers. Going to have the Ruck brothers there one day. We're going to have the Robertson brothers one day. Why not?
Well, what do you make of it? Because it's to me, Dallas now are they in sort of this weird transition? I don't know what to make of it. If you had to say who's the best team, even just who's the best team in the Central right now? Is it not Dallas still? I don't know. Colorado close, maybe. I don't know. How is Dallas not right in that discussion?
Well, the thing is that I think you could name 5 teams in the Central and say they're the best team. When you look at what Utah added yesterday, when you think of Trocheck and Anders Lee, short term, these guys can still play the game. Yeah, they're going to be a factor in the Central. I mean, the Central, the arms race in the Central. If we thought last year or the year before was nuts, it's going to be crazier this year. It really is.
Yeah,
and Chris McFarland's going to try to improve things in Nashville too. I mean, I like what Winnipeg did do with the Mario Ferraro. I think Mario Ferraro is an underrated defenseman. Didn't get much attention because he played in San Jose. I think he's going to be a good, strong defensive guy for the Jets. Yeah. The question there is who's he going to be skating in front of? Is it Stu Skinner or Connor Hellebuck? So that there's a ton of things, question marks about the Central. I'm not as sold on Colorado as other people. No. I wonder with everything that Joe is doing now to move money out, because he's got to re-sign Cale Makar. That's going to be the big issue there. Are they putting too much emphasis on, we got Cale and we got Nathan and we can win? And in this day and age, that's not enough. I think that's the one thing we learned with the Hurricanes winning the Stanley Cup, is that depth matters more than ever in this league.
Yeah. Well, and you saw that with Colorado, right? I mean, Nathan McKinnon's all banged up. Cale Makar's banged up. And they get swept by Vegas. And, again, Vegas to me, they just, they rolled line after line, and Dorofeyev and Eichel and Stone, and, they had way too much, and Colorado could not answer that. They could not answer it. Martin Necas had wasn't a great series for him in that Western Conference final, and Nazem Kadri, and, it is interesting to see what Joe Sakic's doing in shedding some of those parts. Jack Drury, and he sent half his team to Nashville already. So
I wonder if Chris and Joe had those conversations like up in the box during Game 4, saying, "Okay, we can't have. Do you want? Who do you want? We'll draw straws. I mean." No, to tell you what, yesterday was. I didn't think yesterday was going to be momentous. It may not have been that, but it was certainly fascinating, and to see we haven't touched on what the Oilers did. The Freddie Anderson thing. I think they got a steal.
Yeah.
On Ryan Shea, who is going to be a really good defenseman for him. He was impressive in Pittsburgh. Again, you wonder, Kyle had already Kyle Dubas had said, Ryan Shea has earned a chance to earn a big contract. I think we all assumed it would be in Pittsburgh, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
I quite like what Stan Bowman did once the dam burst. And he didn't have that $9.25 million to pay Darnell Nurse.
Yeah, and I thought he did okay on the return for Darnell Nurse. To me, this speaks, Scotty. This speaks to the new NHL. Yeah. Getting cap space. Yeah.
Getting cap space is as important as getting a player.
Yeah.
And it's taken a long time for managers to learn that.
Yeah, I don't. Again, like how fascinating. Two teams in that Pacific Division, right? I mean, how good could San Jose be? I know, again, lots of people, strong feelings about Jacob Trouba and Darnell Nurse, but holy cow. And you throw in the Kesselring, who comes from Buffalo and signs a 3-year deal. That defense is enormous, and there is some snarl there. So, how quickly, to me, that's the question now. Because sometimes you see it, a team that gets, and I think we saw this back in the day with Columbus, maybe a team looks like it's close. San Jose played to game 80, still in the playoff race, jumps up to number 2 and get Ivor Stenberg in the draft. I mean, it's all fallen nicely for Mike Grier. You don't want, can you excel? Can you try too quickly? I don't know. I like that San Jose team, but wouldn't it be fun if, San Jose and Edmonton finished 2-3 in the Pacific? I'd watch that playoff round. It would be a ton of fun.
I think San Jose Edmonton games in the regular season are going to be wild too.
Yeah.
By the way, I think Mike Grier, we talk about great drafts. 2003 was one of those great drafts that had depth. I'm going to go out on a limb and I say what San Jose did in the first round on Friday night, not only with, Stenberg, but with the other 2 defensemen they got in Verhoff and Lynn.
Yeah.
It will go down as one of the great drafts. So 5 years from now, when the San Jose Sharks are in the Stanley Cup final, those 3 guys are going to be factors for that hockey club.
Yeah.
That's how good I think that they did in that draft. And on the flip side, last year was the coming out party for the Ducks.
Yeah.
And Pat Verbeek has a ton of cap space. He can play with it a little bit. But are the Ducks going to take a step back this year with what they're only
going to play with 2 defensemen?
Well, now their defense was not that good last year. Let's be honest.
No,
it was it had big names. They had big names, but they didn't necessarily do exactly what Joel Quenneville wanted them to do. But when you think about the names that are not there anymore, Trouba, Carlson, McTavish to a lesser extent, but I mean, McTavish was persona non grata by the end of the regular season anyway, so that was he had to go. So you do wonder if the Ducks are still on the same trajectory this year.
Yep. Yeah, no, that is a good question. And it does, I still think they're probably a playoff team, but you're right that, and they didn't, their defense wasn't great to begin with, but now they have to address that at some point.
Right.
And then, LA makes the playoffs. Kenny Holland, not a fan of the youth movement as he Corey Perry and Eric Holla and Matt Zuccarello. I don't.
By the way, I'm a huge Matt Zuccarello fan.
Oh, count me in. I totally. But durability is an issue. And that team is thin down the center. Now Andrei Kopitar's gone. They're not great down the middle. They're very old, and I would say charitably, maybe not that fast on the wings. I don't know. Again, if San Jose takes the step we imagine that they're capable of, if Anaheim, are they holding a place? To me, it looks, who's worse in the Pacific Division than the Kings right now? Vancouver.
Well, Calgary and Vancouver.
Yeah. And I will tell you this, though. Calgary's going to play hard. Calgary is going to break some hearts. I don't think they're a playoff team, but they're going to be a team that breaks some hearts. I don't know. The Kings are kind of like, and I think Peter Laviolette's going to, maybe bring some life to the offense, which has been an issue there. But I don't know. It's just an interesting day for Ken Holland, who, when we keep talking about the league getting younger and faster, not in LA. That's it.
Well, you know what? Where players go to die.
I don't know. Again, it's just so interesting, right? It's like, well, okay, that maybe one or two of them, but you've added 3 players. Where are the kids going to play, right? Like, I don't know.
Well, first of all, how many kids do they have?
Well, that's yes, issue one there. Yeah.
But the great thing about anything that Kenny does, you will be able to have a conversation with Kenny, and he'll bring out the piece of paper and he'll look at it and tell you, I got 42 goals out of these 3 guys,
yeah,
and he's a here and now guy.
Yeah,
and his job is to get them past 4 games of the Stanley Cup playoffs next year, and can he do it? And then we're going to have the Drew Doughty story is going to hang over them for the whole season as well, about no contract going to be coming, and Kenny was very transparent about that, and Drew's going to be being asked about it all the time wherever city he goes to. So it's the Kings are. I actually was going to send Ken a note and ask him if he wanted some walkers, to park at the side of the part of crypto. But I thought that was a little tacky. So
a little bit. It does. It makes for an interesting. Conversation for, and I provided some content over the last couple of years periodically for the Kings, and was around them and spent, time with Drew Doughty at 4 Nations and at the Olympics. And if that team's not in the playoffs, where is he like, find me a place at the deadline? Like there's nobody wants to win more than Drew Doughty. And it doesn't kill anyone more than it kills Drew Doughty that they have not won a playoff series since winning the Cup in 2014. So, how interesting would that be to see Drew Doughty pulling on an Avs jersey, or, what a Minnesota Wild jersey got? He's not American, so maybe not to Minnesota, but you know what I mean? Like, to me, that would be one of the interesting stories as it goes along. If the Kings can't keep pace in the West, and I think there's a 50-50 chance, maybe greater, that they're not a playoff team. I mean, how interesting would that discussion be? A surefire first ballot Hall of Famer and Drew Doughty maybe finding somewhere else to play.
Well, I'm waiting for the Doughty to the Maple Leaf stories to start. That's the last piece of the puzzle that the Leafs need to make the playoffs. Drew Doughty comes home.
Yeah, Jim Hiller, and
sure.
And here's I hope Jim Hiller has just a bang out season for the Leafs. He's a good man, and he's a thoughtful guy. And I remember talking to Barry Trotz about him when I was doing some stuff for the Kings, and people didn't know who Jim Hiller was, maybe, but his history is long. He's learned a lot. He's coached with Babs, coached with Barry Trotz. He knows the game, it's going to be interesting to see, how he handles that Toronto media. But I hope he has a great season. I think it would be what a great story that's going to be.
I think that what you touched on there is going to be the biggest issue for Jim. Behind closed doors of the dressing room, on the confines of the bench, I think that Jim Hiller will do just fine. It's how he manages the external noise on a daily basis. Because let's be honest, he had trouble in L.A. managing the external noise. And that was L.A. with 6 guys.
Yeah. Yeah,
so that they're going. This is something where Chayka and Sundin and Pelly are going to have to say, how do we help Hiller? How do we protect Hiller as much as possible? Because if they can do that and deflect, then perhaps Jim can just do what he was hired to do, and that was coach.
Yeah. And that's not nothing. I know people get tired of hearing the media story in Toronto, and like you're there. I covered the Leafs.
Everybody talks about it. Everybody talks about it.
It's a story.
It's a fact. Yeah,
it is a factor. So, yeah, I again can't wait. Let them drop the puck. Let's go.
Yeah. So before we let you go, we had Doug Armstrong coming up after the break, the former general manager of the St. Louis Blues. Now, he finished his career with a flurry. Trading for Connor McMichael, trading for Mason McTavish, using his draft picks. Where do you think Doug Armstrong's legacy will be when it comes to the Blues and his 22 years of being a manager in the NHL? He's not retiring. He's going to be around. But where do you think the Blues are at this point?
Well, I think he ranks right up there in terms of a builder. And you look at his career. I mean, is there not a place for him in the Hockey Hall of Fame? And given what he did in Dallas, his work, tireless work in St. Louis, culminating with
had they won the gold in February, you're probably right.
Yeah, I think you're right. But he's still a pretty good run for him. Yeah, it'll be interesting, because no one hears, of course, but the Hall of Fame discussion on a guy like Doug Armstrong at some point. But what,
Doug Armstrong's legacy, by the way, Doug Armstrong's legacy as a manager and his contributions to the game are greater than Brian Burke's.
And
Brian Burke just got inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Yeah. No, I just think, and I think Doug's been so, both internationally, his work with Team Canada, at very, over the years, and what, that franchise in St. Louis, it hasn't always been easy there. And no. I just think he's been such an important force and face of that team. And he speaks to the game so eloquently and really, he's the best. You can pass along my regards to him, but I think there's a place in my Hockey Hall of Fame. There's a place for Doug Armstrong for sure. And
he would the fascination with that for me is he would go in just as his father went in as a member of the Hockey Hall of Fame, and quite frankly, Scotty, that'd be cool. That would be
outstanding.
That would be cool. Yeah, Neil Armstrong, who went in as a longtime official in the National Hockey League. Thanks for this, Scotty.
My friend, always enjoy it anytime.
And enjoy the 4th of July, please. Just enjoy it safely. 250 years in the United States. Doug Armstrong next on this edition of 100% Hockey.
With the NHL app, you can listen to every NHL game right from your phone. And with home and away broadcast feeds, you choose your way to listen.
And he scores!
Whether you're at work, at the gym, or stuck in traffic, the NHL app puts you right in the action all season long. Every team, every game, everywhere you go. Download the NHL app and never miss a moment.
Welcome back to 100% Hockey. John Shannon, no Millard. He's out golfing somewhere. Don't forget, on YouTube or all the podcast platforms, if you like it, subscribe, thumbs up, and give us a comment if you enjoy what we're doing, or just as importantly, if you don't. Joined now by the president of hockey operations, Doug Armstrong from the St. Louis Blues. There's something missing out of that title. It used to be the longest business card in the world. It isn't anymore, Doug. How are you doing after 2 days of semi-employment?
Yeah, it's been good. Yesterday was obviously a exciting day around the league and for the Blues, but today is a little bit different. I was talking to Alex Steen earlier this morning. I said, this is the day you usually pick up the phone and check in with all the managers before summer starts rolling. And I said, but that's your job, so I'll figure out something to do.
So what will your job be now?
John, quite honestly, I'm not sure. I've talked to, there's a lot of presidents of hockey operations, but like Keith Jones and Cam Neely come from a different background. So what I've tried to do is talk to people that were managers that went into this role, and really initially because of Alex's how he got here. I think I can mentor him. I can work with him. I could be a sounding board to help him along. He's only been in the organization in the management role for a couple of years, so there's a lot of things that he's not aware of that I can hopefully guide him towards and let him make decisions with all the information. And then I'm looking forward to actually getting out and doing a little more scouting in the fall, reconnecting with our pro and amateur staff. Maybe just become a little more hockey centric than hockey / business centric.
So this is not a case of you taking, quite frankly, a step back and saying I need more quality time?
I think that, yes, I think that's going to happen with it also. I just, I did during my 22-year management or GM career, I did have a time where I got let go in Dallas, and I had a couple of years working for John Davidson and Larry Plow, and there was a certainly different rhythm in that as director of player personnel. As the manager, you really are. You're managing people, all the people. Now Alex can do that. So I think there will be more free time. I think that I'll be able to do things maybe I haven't done in the past. I've been invited to a member guest in December that I'm considering doing. I would have never done that before. So I'm going to try and figure things out, but I'm certainly not, I want to help Alex any way I can, but it's certainly not a retirement package.
So the first thing I can think of is the guys that you have worked for prior to your time in St. Louis, the guys like Clark and Gainey. Is there part of what they did and how they do it something you're going to subscribe to as far as being this job?
Yeah, it is. I've talked to, Bob and Bob have been with my father, the most three influential men in my life as far as professional sports, all three Hall of Famers, all different personalities, but all with the same basic background in team building and how to conduct yourself in the NHL. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Bob Gainey is the one I probably have the most contact with and the one that I'm closest with, just because of the number of years that we worked together and the friendship that we built that goes well past hockey. But when I asked him why he left the Dallas Stars in 2002 when I took over, it's something I'll remember. He said, it's always better to leave the party before the host has to ask you to go. And I felt I got to
learn that. I have to learn that.
And I just felt that it was time to leave the party here in St. Louis as a GM. I think it's self-serving. I think we left it in a very good spot for Alex to take the assets that are here and mold it into it back to the level of team that we had for better part of a little over a decade here in St. Louis, where we were fortunate to win one cup, unfortunate to only win one, but we were a contending team for the better part of a decade, and that's what this city deserves, and that's what Alex's role and job responsibility will be to do.
How do you avoid not hovering?
Again, I've talked to a lot of people. I think that it's.
You're a hands-on guy, Doug.
Yeah, I know, and it's going to be a challenge, and I'm aware of that, and I'm going to have to make sure that Alex is comfortable, and he and I are very comfortable with each other. That he'll tell me when he thinks it's time for a break, time to move on, and like just giving them their space. I think training camp will be a perfect example of that. My thought right now is to go observe practices, but usually you get there at 7 and you'd sit till 11 and talk and kibitz and plan and then watch practice and then sit around for another couple of hours. I'll probably cut that time in half. George McPhee is someone that I truly respect of how he's done it in Vegas, and probably he and Joe Sakic are ones I'm going to really lean on because they manage their own team. And then they became presidents of that team. And, both gave the job to someone internal like Alex is doing, and they work with them. So there's going to be a lot of similarities between those two guys that I'm going to rely on. But yeah, that's a really great point, John. I'm going to have to make sure that the staff, the players, the trainers, the coaches, everyone sees there's a different rhythm. And to do that, I have to work closely with Alex, but maybe a little bit more behind the scenes.
And what is it? And I know you've answered this a lot, but maybe more in St. Louis than for the rest of the hockey world. What is it in Alex that you saw, that Tom Stillman saw, that said this guy can be a manager?
I just obviously watching him operate. He and I came to St. Louis in 2008 together. Probably less than 6 months apart, and then I watched him grow as a middle, a young man to a man, to a family man, to, winning a cup. And I just was always been impressed how he carries himself. He carries himself like a pro, on and off the ice. I said to someone the other day, he has that ability, and it reminds me a lot of Bob Gainey, that he can, at noon, go out with some beers with the younger guys and have a few laughs. Then at 7:00, go out for dinner with the married couples and fit seamlessly into both groups. And that's not easy to do. And then just his hockey acumen is high. His work ethic is second to none. His passion for the game, but just as important, his passion for St. Louis. He understands our market. He understands, John, that and you see it a lot right now, that there's a handful of teams, and I think it's cyclical too, so I don't think it's forever, that everyone wants to gravitate to. And he understands what we have to do to get players to want to come in St. Louis. And for us, it starts with the on-ice product. And he and I talk a lot about it. I look at Minnesota and Carolina as prime examples. I think that's where Minnesota was. During the majority of my tenure here, of players wanting to come and play here because they had a chance to win. 6 or 7 years ago, Carolina would not have been everybody's I want to go to list. But right. You look at the job that Tom has done and Eric has done, it's a destination now. You and I both lived in Minnesota. We enjoyed our time there, I'm sure, but it wasn't something that you would think would be attracting all the free agents. But now Billy Guerin's done a great job of doing that. And I think that Alex and I understand that St. Louis has to operate that way. We're not going to our product on the ice and in the environment we have in our organization is going to create a desire for people to stay here and then also to come here. We did that, as I said, when Jay Bomeister came, and we've had a lot of players come here. And the one thing that's hard for people from the outside to understand, it is hard to get players here, but it's even harder to get them to go. Yeah. Because St. Louis is such a great town. It's a sports town. The players love it here. They're treated fairly. There is an expectation from the fan base, but there's also the ability to breathe outside the game that I think gives everyone the best of both worlds.
It's funny. I was going to ask a couple of questions about some of the deals you did last week, but we can get to that. But your comment there about places to play and attracting, particularly in this world of no-move contracts, which that's another topic. But isn't it just about winning, creating a winning environment? Buffalo is now off of teams' lists because they're winning. Carolina, you talked about. Winning, and it's not about taxes as much as it is about creating a positive environment where people can play the game and enjoy the game and win, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there are tiebreakers. Tiebreakers go to warm weather for a lot of people. Tiebreakers go to how much money you're putting in your pocket at the end of the day. But it starts around winning. You're correct, and I take it even broader. It's not about winning. Point total winning. It's about the culture of a winning organization, because you're going to have everything is going to be lined up really well. You're going to have a bad year. You're going to have injuries. You're going to have things going. But when players scratch beneath the surface of how they're treated, and we're really consistent on that. Like we don't pamper the players. It's not private jets here and there, and like team meals every night, but I don't think they really want that. What I think they want is an organization that's stable, that has a plan, and they can execute that plan. And I think that's, as I said, one of the things that John and John Davidson and Larry Plow had set up here was that vision, and we were able to take that and implement it for, I think from 2010 to 21 or 22, we had the second or third highest winning percentage, and we didn't have a problem getting players. And now we're honest with ourselves that that's why a rebuild in St. Louis and these markets is harder, because it's hard to get everything to align correctly. So when we made the decision, Mr. Stillman, and when I presented him with a concept of trying to retool, and was to get as many players as we could within a 5-year age bracket, and bringing in the players that we brought in last week, bringing in Broberg and Holloway to add that to our own players. I think we're able to accomplish that to some level. And now, John, what we're going to be able to do is let these players grow together, and then hopefully over time, players will get to be free agents and say, you know what, I like that program. I think they're going to win. I think they have an opportunity to win. And then you add in lifestyle. Probably one of the best places to raise a family in the NHL is St. Louis, Missouri. That's all going to go into it. But you're right. That's not the first thing that players thinking about. And if it is the first thing they're thinking about, they're probably not the players that you want, because you want players that strive to be champions.
How much fun was last week? Your last kick at the can, and there you are. You're moving guys. You're trading at the draft. You have 4 first-round picks to play with. Was there something in the back of your mind saying, I better make a splash here as my manager in my last try?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was like egotistically making a splash. I think that I go back to, and I'll remember it, the night before the trade deadline this year. We had plans, but we weren't sure whether they're going to implement those. And it was a sleepless night. And then, we wake up the next day where we have the capability to move some very solid veteran players for first round picks, prospects, and third round picks. And that started the ball rolling. And then it allowed us to be one of the draft basically had to run through St. Louis in some fashion after the top 7 guys, because of the number of picks we had. And that was really something that doing what we did at the trade deadline allowed us to do. And our goal was always to use some of these picks to improve this year's team. But again, the night before the draft, I talked to Alex and I said, everyone's got a plan, but our plan should be, we've got to be ready to pick 4 times. That's the focus. And then deals start to fall into place, and it works out. So it was a lot of fun. And I think the most enjoyable part, John, was we stayed consistent to where we've been the last 3 years of adding players in an age bracket, and using those primary assets to do that. And also putting young players in a position to succeed. We have a young player by the name of Juracek we took in the first round, played in the OHL, the defenseman of the year in the OHL. And there's a tendency to just say, well, let's just throw him into the league and see how he does. But Les Jackson, who you know well, he coined a phrase to me that stuck with me for almost 30 years, is the NHL fails as many players as players fail the NHL. And how he described that to me was, if you don't put players in positions to succeed and they fail, that's on you. And so Juracek's going to get an opportunity to come in here and steal a job, take a job. But if he can't, we're not going to force him in here and make him play in a situation that he can't thrive. We're running a marathon with these younger players, and we want to make sure that we give them the best opportunity.
I remember having you on the old show with Bob, and you had just signed Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas to 8-year deals in hope that they would be the cornerstones of the franchise. I don't think it's worked out the way you wanted it to. How difficult was it then to trade Kyrou last week?
It was hard. I had talked to him, after the trade, and again, I tried to be a realist that when separations happen in organizations, I think it's egotistical to think it's a one-sided reason. I don't think that we gave Jordan the best opportunity the last couple of years. we could have provided him different elements, and but change. Well, when it goes like that, I think it's Jordan. I think it's healthy for everyone to have a fresh start. I think he's going to thrive in a Washington environment. I think that I've worked with. I saw TJ Oshie go to Washington and thrive. I've seen players come to St. Louis and thrive. Sometimes one change is what you need to recalibrate and then take that next chapter. And I wish we had won Stanley Cups with Jordan. I wish he had finished his career here. But the reality is sometimes things don't work out ideally, and I don't blame Jordan for that whatsoever. But it's insanity to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the result to change.
And I don't expect you to speak for the general manager, but all the noise around Robert Thomas the last 7 or 8 months disappears, and Robert Thomas is a Blue for a while?
Yeah, that was created by that dumb old manager. No. The Robert Thomas thing, John, actually grew, as you know, in your current role, covering hockey. It only takes one person to start something, then it can really grow, and it can grow, and it can grow. I think the Robert Thomas available thing grew way bigger than it ever was. But with that being said, you can't control that. Once it's out there, you can't control it. But Robert, I know, wants to be a St. Louis Blue. I know Alex wants him to be a St. Louis Blue. They're working marvelously together in charting out how he can have a massive effect on. He's the old man of the next generation at 26.
Wow. It's hard to imagine, huh? How young your team's gotten so quickly.
Yeah. Like we have certainly veteran players like Fowler and Parenko and Binnington, but that core that's the build around core, Robert has to take charge of, and he wants to take charge of. And I'm so excited for him because it in life you want new challenges. And I think this is going to be his game on the ice will always improve, but having something that gets you excited every day. And I think this opportunity to put both hands on the wheel, a directional wheel, from the player's perspective, and then know that he has to have both hands on the wheel with Alex Steen in the organizational direction. It's a great challenge. And I think he views it as a great opportunity.
The other guy you got is another center, and Mason McTavish, who obviously was not in Joel and Pat's good books the last couple of months of the regular season and playoffs in Anaheim. How does a trade like that come about? Are you phoning managers saying, listen, we have picks that we're happy to move if you find somebody you like? How does that communication work? And I would assume at this point that when a player became available that Pat wanted, he phoned you?
Well, I think, and that's just the relationships you build over time. Right. It was easy for me to call Pat, over the last couple of years and say, because our direction was clear. We're trying to add players into that group, and he was, I'm in the same boat as you are, Yeah. And so we didn't really have we were competing against adding those players, but then his team excelled quickly. Some of the players up front for him have just came onto the scene, exploded, and then he brought in veteran players, and he's at a stage now where he's trying to acquire veteran players, trying, what he did at the deadline with Carlson. We're not there yet. So I say that so he knew what we were trying to accomplish. And then when he had someone that might fit that, that the conversations start. And that's why I go back to how important the trade deadline was for us, is we also had the assets to get involved for a young player like that. And in McTavish directly, obviously we have to look at the glass half full on why we do these things. And, you have a player that just turned 23. And I said to Alex Steen, the benefit of this is all the scar tissue that he's built up now is coming on somebody else's dime. So right. we don't have to go through those learning curves with him. And they were learning curves. You go in as a third overall pick. It's just natural. You see it around the league. Like your third overall pick, haven't played a game, he's probably on the side of the building, as you drive up. You got to market around these guys. And then there was he had a good 3 years, and he felt that Pat wasn't respecting him enough contractually, so he held out. And then you parcel that with a new coach that's there to win, and he wants to have a good training camp. And one of the core building blocks isn't there, and so he just moves on. That's the part that I think that your experience understands that it's hard for the fans. It's a cutthroat business. It is cutthroat, and the king is dead. Long live the king. And he wasn't there. Probably wasn't. The conversations around him probably they're never great when someone's holding out. And they don't turn quickly. Like, you can say, okay, it's just business, but there's residual effect to things like that. And then his year didn't go good, so we looked at it as he's learned a lot. He's a prideful young player. And then you go back on his history. What did he do in junior hockey? What did he do in the World Juniors? How did he do in the playoffs? How did he do in the game for the best? And that's why you go third overall, is because you excel in those areas. So they were at a different maturation point. They had other players coming, and I think it worked out really good. Pat was insistent on the player that he wanted in the draft, and at pick 13, he said, "My player is still there. If I think it was Columbus doesn't take him, we have a deal." And so then you just sit there and you wait to hear the name, and if it's not the name he told me it was going to be, I knew we had a deal.
Yeah. That's the magic of the draft, dude. You don't have to vote on it anymore, or maybe you do. But do you like the decentralized draft?
Organizationally, I think it's fantastic. I think you get to spend time with your entire staff. Like we had a situation in Vegas, and a team picking right in front of us, a couple of slots in front of us, saw the same player come into our room twice for an interview, and they ended up taking the kid. and I'm not saying they took him because they knew we were going to take him, but there are those things that you just can't control. Right. And I think it's easier for the teams to have open dialogue. As you know, when you cover the draft, a manager gets up to talk to another manager, and then that starts the
18,000 people see it.
Yeah, and the business is so big now. Like, you can't find a corner at the draft in the first round. Like, you can't go, into the locker room area because Central Registry's in that area. You can't go over there. The PA's in that area. You can't find a quiet time. So I think to do the business, I think it's great. I think you accomplish a lot more for the teams by being in your own market.
So you don't see it going back?
I think I don't want to put.
No, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I mean,
I think Gary said, maybe, I think at his, this isn't something he wants to vote on every year. We did it for a year. The teams had a vote. The teams liked it. I don't see Gary having another vote this year, well above my pay grade. But I think we want to. I think you have to let things play themselves out, in my opinion, to see really what it's like. I think maybe. I'll pick an arbitrary number, 5 years. 5 years, then look at how it all went. I think, we learned that we have to speed up the first round. It was painfully slow. Now, I thought being at the draft, it was painfully slow.
But the reality of the draft is, and I mean, I was a TV guy, so you'd think I'd want it on TV, but I think I'm more of a hockey guy too. Is the reality of the draft is it's for the teams first, the players second, and the fan third. And if you can service the teams and the players, maybe the fans have to, and the fans do suffer, but it's a business day now more than anything else, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. And again, I'm giving you my opinion. Like, after the top 10 picks, the fans really don't know the rest of the players. like 8 to 10 players. But when you get to 25, 23, 30, 32, I'm going to say 80% of the fans have never heard of that guy. nor should they. Like he's a 17-year-old kid from Slovakia, or
Yeah.
so like I think the excitement is in the first 4 or 5 picks, and then the excitement for every organization is in your own pick. But yeah, I'm with you. This is big business. This is big business, and you want to get. That's an important day for every franchise.
How do you manage no move clauses?
Well, we did in St. Louis. We haven't given a no move clause. We give no trade clauses. The no move clause has always been the most dangerous to me because it gives the player more power than the owner.
Right.
The no trade clause, you can, if it gets to the point where the relationship is so severed, you can put him on waivers. The no move clause is he has more power than the owner because you can't put him on waivers. He has all the cards. You have none. The no trade clause, at least you have a couple of cards, and the one is waivers. But I think what we've learned now is, this is a good. I hope you got a couple of minutes. I've always thought the NHL, just because of the strength of the other, we're usually about a decade behind the activities of the other leagues. So what was it, about a decade ago, LeBron James had a show on where I'm going to go. That would have never happened in hockey, but it happened this year. The same thing, just not the show.
Right.
When I was in baseball, when I was in Texas with Mr. Hicks on the team, A-Rod came in. Like he and his agent were running the league. The league now is and it's reality. I don't complain about it. It's there's the power agents that are dictating a lot of what's going on, and you can either find a way to work with them, or you can like stomp your feet and say this isn't fair, but like fair doesn't matter. So the league's in a very interesting spot. But saying that, I think teams now are going to be a little more hesitant to give full no trades. I think it's probably going to get harder for a mid-level player, whatever that is, to get that. I see like the Montreal player just signed, maybe one of the top young players in the world, with a 10-team no trade.
Yeah, Demidov. Yeah,
I think probably 5 years ago that would have been a full no trade. So everyone's starting to understand that you once you give that away, it's hard to get it back. And now I think teams may try and claw a little bit of that back. I told a story about when you're seeing what's happening right now with a subset of players. And it was Michael Jordan. I think he was playing in the Essentia Pro Celebrity thing out in Tahoe when LeBron James did where he's going to play. And he has the same mindset that you and I probably had. He said, I don't get it. Like, the last thing I wanted to do was play with Julius Erving or Larry Bird or Magic Johnson. I wanted to beat them. I didn't want to go play with them. And that's what the elite players do. I look at Joe Sakic. I look at Steve Yzerman. I look at Mario. I look at now Sid right now. Like they're not looking to build a super team. They want to be the leader of a super team. And when you look at what's happening now, players are okay going to an organization winning, knowing that they're just a bit piece in the winning. Like bit piece as they didn't create the environment. They're just sort of going in and want to run on the coattails of the guys that built it, versus the Crosbys, the Yzermans, the Sakics, the Lemieux that blood, sweat, tear, and want to build through that. And I'm not complaining. That's just the new reality. And what we want to try and do is create an environment where our players are willing to stick with us going through tough times because they want to be part of the solution, and they're willing. And that's where Alex has to create an environment where they want to do that. That's it's a two-way street, but it's an interesting time now because, as I said, you have a subset of players that are more than happy to go to a different organization and be the final piece than be the core piece.
But they want to go to win. Right, they want to go to win.
Yeah, they want to win, and I think as a manager, you would like a guy to want to create the win.
2026, how would you define the year 2026 when you consider what the Blues were? And gosh, the Olympics feel like such a distant memory now, don't they?
No.
Oh, sorry. How hard was it?
It was really good. There's not a day go by I don't think of that. How rewarding it was to be part of the process from the Four Nations to the Olympics. How proud I was of how our team played in the gold medal game, and we got goalied. And you know what? Like, the goalie plays a big part of the game too. I don't think we could have played a better game. We didn't win, so it stings. It stings because if we had have played poorly, or it had have been a 50-50 game, but it wasn't a 50-50 game, in my opinion. Other people may see it differently. I thought that we had I think the expected goals were 5.5 to 1.5 or something. We got goal, and I give Hellebuck a ton of credit. Like that, that's why he's getting the Medal of Freedom or whatever he's getting in the States. I don't know what he's getting, but it was a heroic thing that he did. So if you're asking me if it stuck with me, yeah, it sure did.
It did. Oh, wow. Because that's the difference of, it's the difference between being a fan and being involved. It's the difference between being a pig and a chicken and bacon and eggs. Yeah. One's involved, the other's committed.
Yeah.
But you guys to get out of Milan and come home and then have to get back onto the treadmill, that must have been difficult.
Like the Blues 2026, I would say would have been disappointing. Yeah. I think that we made a coaching change in November of a year ago, brought in Jim Montgomery. He was able to stabilize our group, and we went on a nice run, played extremely well down the stretch, got into the playoffs feeling good about ourselves, had Winnipeg dead to rights, 2-goal lead with 2 minutes left, and we found a way to not secure that. But we did go into the summer with excitement. We thought we had turned the corner of the not understanding where we're at. We were bringing back veteran players. We thought we were in a good spot, and then it didn't work that way for us, and we got frustrated, and so then it led to the trade deadline where it became evident that we couldn't roll this back again in 26, 27. And so it went from a very disappointing year to a very exhilarating trade deadline to a very exciting to July 2nd. I think there's a core group of players, like with, as I said, Robert Thomas, but Jake Neighbors, Holloway, Broberg, Joel Hofer. Now you add in McTavish and you add in McMichael, and then you had a young Jimmy Snuggerud coming and a Mayu coming. Like, these guys they really want to put into play what they've learned. The great thing about Shen and Falk and Bennington and that group, they've played it forward to those guys about what's going to be needed to win. And these guys now are chomping at the bit to partner with Alex to build something that everyone can be proud of.
What's on your to-do bucket list for the summer now? You don't have to worry near about day to day.
That's a good question. It was about a month ago. I was just sitting with my wife. I said, because usually I do my schedule out a couple of months, and I'm going to go to this tournament. I'm going to go to Plymouth. Then I'll probably go to the Halinka. Then we'll do this, and then we'll try and get away here. And July and August had nothing. There was nothing. So my wife and I are going to get away. We're going to go on a little retreat for a week up into the Berkshires, and then I'll probably end up finding my way to Plymouth. We have 3 of the American players, a Canadian player, and a Swedish player that'll play in that tournament, and it'll be about 100 degrees in St. Louis for seven weeks, so I'll get out of this. But yeah, it's as I said, I'm learning my new norm.
Just don't hover, okay? Just don't hover. Don't hover. Thanks for this, Doug.
Always enjoy it. Thank you very much.
President of Hockey Operations of the St. Louis Blues, Doug Armstrong. Back on 100% Hockey after this.
Face-Off Inside the NHL returns, taking you deeper behind the scenes than ever before. See it all from the star-studded Four Nations Face-Off tournament
Us against the world, boys.
to the adrenaline of the Stanley Cup playoffs.
I'm scared of you guys.
With candid interviews and backstage access, experience the sacrifice, the rivalries, and the determination that define NHL greatness.
Just when I thought last year couldn't be topped, here we are.
A new season of Face-Off Inside the NHL. Watch now only on Prime Video.
Thanks to Scott Burnside. Thanks to Doug Armstrong for spending some time with us on 100% Hockey. Darren will be back next week as we try to explore the offseason in the National Hockey League. Something tells me that with what's going on, what has gone on, it's never going to be boring. Don't forget, if you like the show, hit subscribe, give us a thumbs up, give us a comment, ask us a question. More than happy to continue to talk about hockey all summer long. Other people may take a break, not 100% hockey. We'll be here a couple of times a week at least to talk about what's going on in the National Hockey League. The next thing is to figure out is the schedule. Something tells me it's coming out the day after the Major League Baseball All-Star Game on a day where there's usually no sports, even though the World Cup of Soccer is being played, the World Football. But at the same time, the NHL has to come up with a few things. We haven't seen any TV deals in the United States be renewed yet. We haven't seen any changes to the TV deal in Canada, even though there's a plenty of rumors about what's going to happen beyond Rogers with television in Canada next season. We'll see you next week. For Millard, producer Hugh McClarty, John Shannon, thanks for listening or watching this edition of 100% Hockey.